Hello, my name is Monica Brown, and I teach 8th grade U.S. History and Social Studies here in Houston ISD. Today I'm going to take you through a lesson where we are going to discover what happened at the end of the Civil War. What exactly was the one thing that ended the Civil War, and who were the players involved? But before we get started, of course, there are a few things that I want you to have. You do need to have a pen or a pencil to take some notes, and you do need to have paper. And of course, if you like to write in your journal, you most certainly can do that. Your learning target today will be that you will be able to explain the significant events of the Civil War, including the firing on Fort Sumter, the battles of Antietam, Gettysburg, and Vicksburg, the Emancipation Proclamation, Lee's surrender at Appomattox Courthouse, and the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. So here is your guiding question today and something for you to consider. Victory in war allows the winning side to dictate terms of peace, often with strong resentment from the losing side. So why did Lee surrender at Appomattox Courthouse? And what were the terms of the surrender? So let's make a real life connection to see maybe what Lee's frame of mind was when he did surrender at Appomattox Courthouse. I want you to think of a time when you have given up. Why did you give up? Was it because something was too difficult? Because you were tired? Because you just didn't care anymore? Or was there a different reason? How did you feel about giving up? Were you relieved? Were you guilty? Did you feel ashamed? Or did you just simply feel defeated? I think that we all have had times when we just wanted to give up. I know I certainly have. Maybe it was a math class that you weren't doing so well in, or maybe it was an English class. Or maybe it was a game that you played that you tried your hardest, but it didn't matter. It didn't go so well. Well, that's okay. As you reflect on your own feelings about what it feels like during that time when you had to give up, I want you to think about how General Lee may have felt at that time. After leading the Confederate Army for 4 years, Lee finally gave up, or we can say he surrendered. How do you think Lee felt when he surrendered? Do you think he felt sad? Do you think that he felt like a failure? Do you think that he felt defeated? Or why? Was it because he lost the war? Or was it because he felt like he had let down the South? Well, today we're going to learn about the end of the Civil War and Lee's surrender at Appomattox Courthouse in 1865. We will also learn about the aftermath of the end of the war, including Lincoln's plan for his second term prior to his assassination. So let's get into some visuals here. Remember, optics. We're going to use our eyes to figure out what it is that we see in this next picture. I want you to take a moment to look at this picture and figure out what it is that you see here. I want you to take maybe about 90 seconds, look at the picture, and think about what do you see? What really stands out in this picture? You have 90 seconds. Well, based on this image, we can infer that the Union troops were destroying things such as railroads and telegraph lines in the South. Why would the North destroy these things? Well, to cut off communication, transportation, The South simply couldn't transport supplies. And if they couldn't transport those supplies that they needed to their troops, it wasn't going to go very well for them. In April of 1865, Lee surrendered. Why do you think he decided to surrender? What circumstances led him to make this difficult decision? Well, let's take a moment and find out. Union General Ulysses S. Grant believed in total war on the enemy's will to fight and its ability to support an army. In May 1864, Grant ordered General Sherman to head towards Georgia to cause all the damage you can against the war resources. In September, Sherman reached Atlanta, the South's most important rail and manufacturing center. His army set the city ablaze, setting anything of value on fire. After burning Atlanta, Sherman marched on to Savannah to destroy the last untouched supply base for the Confederacy. As they marched through Georgia, Sherman's troops destroyed everything of value they found. Fields were burned, houses were robbed, hay and food supplies were burned. Roads were lined with dead horses, hogs, and cattle that his troops could not eat or carry away. Everything useful in a 60-mile wide path was destroyed. They continued to march through the Confederacy. And in March of 1865, Sherman and his troops reached the capital of the Confederacy. That was Richmond. Meanwhile, Grant's forces battered Lee's army at Petersburg, the gateway to Richmond. At this point in the war, roughly 250,000 Confederate soldiers had died. On April 1st, 1865, the Union forces finally broke through Confederate lines to capture the city. 2 days later, Union troops marched into Richmond and surrounded Lee's army. Lee told his officers, "There's nothing left for me to do but go and see General Grant. I would rather die 1,000 deaths." So I want you to consider this. Based on what we just read, what were some of the reasons why Lee would surrender? Well, you have the North burned Atlanta. They burned the fields. They killed livestock. 250,000 soldiers had died, loss of lives. They destroyed the food. Really, what other choice did he have? Why do you think Lee should have kept fighting? Or do you think he should have kept fighting? Did he do the right thing in surrendering? Well, based on what we just read, it looks like there really wasn't any choice. Too far into it, I want you to take a look at this picture and tell me, what does it mean to you? It says July 4th, 1776. See the pictures of fireworks? If you're like me, you probably are immediately thinking of July the 4th, that day when we get off and we can celebrate and have fireworks, barbecue, celebrate the independence of the nation. We all do it, right? Well, the 4th of July, it is a national holiday because it celebrates our country's Declaration of Independence from Great Britain. But did everyone gain independence after the American Revolution? No. African Americans remained enslaved. So when freedom was granted to African Americans, this was called the Emancipation Proclamation. Do you remember when we talked about this in a previous lesson? The Emancipation Proclamation was issued in 1863. But African Americans were not included on the day our nation officially declared their independence. It would be almost 100 years before African Americans were officially free. Most people know and believe that the Emancipation Proclamation freed all slaves in rebelling states. But one rebelling state continued to enslave African Americans until the end of the Civil War in 1865. Do you know what state I'm talking about? Let's find out. The Emancipation Proclamation ended slavery throughout the United States. In fact, it only emancipated slaves from rebelling states, states that joined the Confederacy. But one of those states failed to free enslaved African Americans in 1863. Slaves in Texas continued to remain in bondage for over 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was announced. With the defeat of the Confederacy at the end of the Civil War, federal troops took control over the rebelling states. When the troops, led by General Gordon Granger, arrived in Galveston, Texas, they discovered that slavery still existed. So on June 19, 1865, General Gordon announced to enslaved African Americans of Texas, the people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. It remains a mystery as to why news of the Emancipation Proclamation did not reach Texas. There are a few theories. One theory is that a messenger was murdered on his way to deliver the news. Another theory suggests that news of emancipation was delayed, ensuring that slaves continued to work on the plantations. Once slaves were emancipated in Texas, many stayed to work for wages. Others left the southern state for a fresh start in the north. In the years after 1865, former slaves celebrated June 19th as the day slavery ended. Celebrations included prayer services, barbecues, and many more activities. As African Americans moved from Texas to other parts of the country, they brought the tradition of Juneteenth with them. Juneteenth, it's not a known holiday like Independence Day, Thanksgiving, or Christmas, but it is a very important day to remember at the end of slavery in this country. And many people have celebrated this historic day over time. Texas was the first state to recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday, but Juneteenth has yet to be recognized as a national holiday. So this visual shows that Juneteenth symbolized the struggle of African Americans to obtain freedom in the United States, serves as an inspiration to all oppressed groups seeking equality, and celebrating Juneteenth as a national holiday places an emphasis on the importance of freedom. This visual here, well, it reminds the country of the road to freedom for African Americans and the work the nation needs to do to ensure freedom for all. Reflect and confront current issues facing people of color, and it's a reminder that the struggle for justice for African Americans continues in the present. This photo here, well, it honors the legacy of enslaved African Americans and the long road to freedom. It celebrates the heroes who sacrificed their lives to ensure the freedom of others. Honoring freedom may pave the way for younger generations to seek and ensure equality for everyone. And here, opportunities for everyone to learn about the history of African Americans, encouraging teaching about various groups in U.S. history, including African Americans' contribution to the development and success of our nation. It allows space to discuss social justice issues that continue to impact American lives. Well, now this is your time to do a little project, a little bit of writing. You're going to create an Instagram post. I'm pretty sure you know what Instagram is. Well, you're going to create your own Instagram post. And well, although Juneteenth has been recognized as a state holiday in many states, it is not a national holiday. There have been many requests to the national government to make Juneteenth a national holiday. Today, people use social media as a platform to spread news and to inform people of events and issues around the world. I want you to create an Instagram post about Juneteenth. Now, not a real Instagram post, but just one that you might want to share. Your post should include a summarization of Juneteenth and why it is important to honor and celebrate the holiday. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that we hit on some really important points that helped you understand what happened after the Civil War. The surrender at Appomattox, the burning of Atlanta, the key players that were involved in the Civil War, and how the struggle for freedom for African Americans was a struggle then, and it continues to be part of our conversation today. Thank you so much. I'm Monica Brown. I teach U.S. History and Social Studies in Houston ISD. Bye.